murders he's committed, promising now to list more, trying to buy time. Our David Miller today has been with two desperate mothers in Utah to know who's on Bundy's gruesome list.
I think every time his name comes up, and the appeals he gives and everything, just reopens, rehashes the whole thing. You relive the whole nightmare again from start to finish, continually. And so I want him to be executed, done away with, so that we don't have to hear his name anymore. We don't have to relive these horrible memories. We can all get on with our lives.
Well, I think it's very simple. I'm just going to ask him to help us resolve all the unanswered questions about all 5 of those cases.
Salt Lake County Sheriff's Detective Dennis Couch spent this weekend preparing for his first and only meeting with Bundy before Tuesday morning's scheduled execution.
In one respect, Mr. Bundy's a very lucky man and very fortunate. He knows when he's going to die. You and I don't have that luxury, and he could clear his conscience and perhaps feel good that he's done that when he meets his maker.
Is there anything you'd want to say to Ted Bundy? Anything you'd want to ask him?
Yes, I'd want to ask him why he killed my daughter and what he did with her, where he put her body.
That's very important to you, isn't it?
It is. Having her body is extremely important. And 3 years ago, we did put a marker in for her. So we do have a headstone at the cemetery where we can take flowers and honor her, but there's still no body there. It's still an open book, so to speak. So I would hope with all my heart that Bundy confesses and tells us where the body is, that we might find it and have that peace of mind.
I still want to know. I would have to come right out and ask him and say, did you kill my daughter? Did you abduct my beautiful daughter? And did you take her and did you kill her?
Connie Wilcox is also waiting for Bundy to reveal the fate of her daughter. In 1974, 16-year-old Nancy walked out of the house, telling her mom she would be back in a minute.
I would give anything if she would just call me on the phone and say, Mom, I've been in California, and I'm coming home.
You really still think that's
No,
possible?
I don't.
Arthur Stephen Michaud is one of the few journalists to talk with Bundy about the alleged murders.
There was never any doubt between us that I knew, that he knew, that I knew that he was talking about himself.
She came up, so he camped behind her. She heard him. She turned around, and he brandished the knife and grabbed her by the arm and told her to do what he wanted her to do. And she began to argue with him. So he placed his hands around her throat just to throttle her into unconsciousness so that she wouldn't scream anymore. He removed her clothes and raped her. Put his own clothes back on, and at that point began to notice that the girl wasn't moving. And so it was clear that the girl was dead. So he carried the body to his car and then returned to his apartment.
This weekend, for the first time since his arrest more than a decade ago, Bundy began talking to investigators from a number of states about the murders. While it is an obvious 11th-hour attempt to prolong his life, families of victims do not agree if the promise of a confession is worth keeping Bundy alive.
I would say he can't continue living because he wouldn't talk about it. I couldn't trust him. I wouldn't believe him.
He should definitely be executed, and I guess he should probably have extra time to tell so that we as parents and family can have peace of mind and be able to end our nightmares.
With us now in Salt Lake City is Mrs. Belva Kent. As I understand it, Mrs. Kent, over the weekend, maybe just within the past 24 hours, Ted Bundy did mention your daughter's name, correct?
That's what we hear from the news media. We've not had any contact with the police force yet, and we talked to them this morning, and they said they would get with us as soon as the detective got back from Florida, and so we're just waiting to hear from them, hoping that what we're hearing is right.
What happens if time runs out?
Pardon?
What happens if time runs out by tomorrow before you can get any further details?
Well, we've had, he already talked to the Utah law enforcement officer. They're just waiting for the Utah officer to return home so they can go over the information that Bundy provided them with.
I do take it rather personally when I hear it broadcast that people want to be killed.
you have any feelings towards Bundy?
I do. I'm very angry with him. I feel like he deprived me of a very special thing, to raise my daughter and to know and love her as she grew into adulthood. I hope they execute him in the morning. I think he deserves to die for all the lives he ruined.
Good evening. Only 8 hours stand between serial killer Ted Bundy and a 7 a.m. appointment with Florida's electric chair. As the hours pass by, a stay for Bundy becomes less likely. Eyewitness News reporter Mike Maychek is in Stark tonight with one of our live cameras and has an update. Mike?
Rob, through the views expressed by a California radio broadcaster, we caught a new glimpse of Ted Bundy, a Ted Bundy who is showing remorse. The Reverend James Dobson spent 1 hour videotaping an interview with Ted Bundy earlier this afternoon, and he says Ted Bundy does not want to die and is near.
I did not ask him how many murders that he had committed, but I did say in the beginning, for the record, do you admit that you have killed many women and children? And he said, yes, I admit that. I am a murderer, or something to that effect. That's not a direct quote, but we began at that point. There was a great deal of remorse. He wept several times while talking to me. He expressed great regret and remorse for what he had done for the families that were hurting. A time or two where I asked him explicit questions, he was so choked up that he was not able to answer me.
It was presumably Ted Bundy's last interview, his last opportunity to tell his story in his own words. It's an interview Bundy and his attorneys want some control over how and when it's broadcast.
The ones of you that have covered this thing from the beginning cannot be surprised that Ted Bundy or his attorneys are once again doing various maneuvers.
Earlier, Bundy canceled a scheduled interview with 30 reporters and instead met with his attorneys and a psychiatrist. This generated speculation Bundy may try to halt his execution with a plea of incompetency. In the past 4 days, Bundy has spent much of his time with investigators from Colorado, Utah, Idaho, and Washington State.
When you're a witness and a reporter, you're so busy really doing your job in there that you don't really have time to sit back and think about it. You just, go in and do the job, get the last statement, watch the clock, watch the doctors, watch Bundy, watch for everything that, so you can, later put it in the story.
Ted Bundy will spend the next couple of hours with a close attorney friend of his and his wife. He has declined to accept a last meal at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, but prison officials say they will offer him the traditional steak and eggs breakfast at 5 o'clock, 2 hours before his 7 o'clock scheduled execution.